Let me start off by saying that Peter Terry was addicted to heroin. We were friends in college and continued to be after I graduate. Notice when I said I. He dropped out after 2 years of barely cutting it. After I moved out of the dorms into a small little apartment, I didn't really see Peter as much. We talked online very now and then. There was a period where he wasn't online for about 5 weeks straight. I wasn't worried. He was pretty notorious for a flake and a drug addict. So I assumed he just stopped caring. Just then, one night I saw him log on. And before I initiated a conversation, he sent me a message. David, man, we need to talk. That was when he told me about the NoEnd House. It got that name because no one had ever reached the final exit. The rules were pretty simple and cliché. Reach the final room of the building and win $500. There's 9 rooms in all. The house was located outside the city, roughly 4 miles from my house. Apparently Peter had tried and failed. He was a he was a heroin, and who knows what the fuck addict he was. So I figured the drugs got the best of him, and he wigged out at the paper ghost or something. He told me it was too much for anyone. It was unnatural. I didn't believe him. I told him I would check it out the next night, and no matter how hard he tried to convince me otherwise, $500 did sound good to be true. I had to go. I set off the following night. When I arrived, I immediately noticed something strange about the building. Have you ever seen or read something that you shouldn't be scary, but for some reason a chill crawls up your spine? I walked towards the building, and the feeling of uneasiness only intensified as I opened the front door. My heart slowed down, and I let out a relief sigh, leaving me as I entered. The room looked like your normal hotel lobby, decorated for Halloween. A sign was posted in place of a worker. It read, "Room 1, this way." A light followed, reaching at the end, and you win. I chuckled at the way the first door. The area was almost laughable. Decor represented a Halloween aisle in Kmart, completed with sheets of ghosts and animatic zombies that gave the startling growl when you passed by them. At the far end was the exit. It was the only door besides the one that I entered through. I brushed through the fake spider webs and headed to the second door. I was greeted by a fog as I opened the room. The room was definitely up the ante in terms of technology. Not only was there a fog machine, but a bat hung in the ceiling and flew in circles. Scary. They seem to have the Halloween soundtrack that you will find at a 99-cent store on loop somewhere in the room. I didn't see a stereo, but I guess it was a PA system. I stepped over a few toy rats that wheeled around and walked through a puff chest cross into the next. I reached the doorknob and my heart sank to my knees. I did not want to open that door. That feeling of dread hit me so hard that I couldn't barely even think. Logic took over me after a few terrifying moments, and I shook it off and entered the next room. Room 3 is when the challenge began to change. On the surface, it looked like a normal room. There was a chair in the middle of a wooden plain floor and a single lamp that lit up the corner. It did a poor job of lighting in the area, casting a few shadows across the floors. That's the problem. Shadows. Plural. With expectations of the chair, there was others. I had barely walked into the room and I was already terrified. It was that moment that I knew something wasn't right. I didn't even think as I automatically tried to open the door I came through, but it was locked from the other side. That set me off. Someone was locking the door behind me as I progressed. There was no way I wouldn't be able to hear them. Was it mechanical? Was it a mechanical lock that set automatically? Maybe. But I was too scared really to think it. I turned back to the room and the shadows were gone. The chair shadows remained, but the others were gone. I slowly shook it off. I slowly wrote it off the shadows as my figment of my imagination. But I began to feel better as I made it halfway to the point of the room, looking down as I took my steps. That's when I saw it. Or didn't see it. My shadow wasn't there. I didn't have time to scream. I ran as fast as I could to the other side of the door, flung myself without thinking into the room beyond. The fourth room was possibly the most disturbing. I closed the door. All the lights seemed to be sucked out and put into the previous room. I stood there, surrounded in darkness, not able to move. I'm not afraid of the dark, and I never have been, but I was absolutely terrified. All sights had me left. I held my hands in front of my face, and if I didn't know what I was doing, I would have never been able to tell. Darkness doesn't describe it. I could hear. I couldn't hear anything. It was dead silence. When you're in a soundproof room, all you can hear is your breathing. You can hear yourself being alive. I couldn't. I began to stumble forward after a few moments. My rapid breath, my rapid beating heart is the only thing I could feel. There was no door in sight. Wasn't even sure if there was one this time. The silence was then broken by a low hum. I felt something behind me. I stood wildly, but I could barely see anything from my nose. I knew there was something there, though. Regardless of how dark it was, I knew something was there. The hum grew louder, closer. It seemed to surround me, but I knew whatever was causing the noise was in front of me. Inching closer, I took a step back. I had never felt that kind of fear. I couldn't really describe the true fear. I wasn't even scared. I was I wasn't even scared I was going to die. I was scared of what the alternative was. I was afraid of what was going. I was afraid of what this thing had in store for me. Then the lights flashed for a second and I saw it. Nothing. I saw nothing. And I know I saw nothing there. The room began to plunge into darkness. The hum became a wild screech. I screamed in protest. I couldn't hear this goddamn noise for another second. I ran backwards away from the noise and fumbled into the door handle. I turned and flew into room 5. Before I describe room 5, you have to understand something. I am not a drug addict. I have no history of drug abuse or any sort of physical term of childhood hallucinations in mention earlier, and those were the only when I really tried just to wake up. I entered the No House with a clear head. After falling into the previous room, my view of room 5 was from my back, looking up at the ceiling. What I saw didn't scare me. It simply surprised me. Trees have overgrown into the room and towards above my head, the ceiling in the room was taller than the others, which made me think I was in the center of the house. I got up off the floor, dusted myself off, and took a look around. It was definitely bigger than all the other rooms. I couldn't even see the door there where I was. Various brushes and trees must have blocked my line of sight with the exit. Up to this point, I figured the room were going to get scarier, but this one was a paradise compared to the last ones. I also assumed whatever was in room 4 stayed back there. I was incredibly wrong.